Hey, y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, we've got something here that we all love, an all stakes pick five. So it's a really nice sequence, a lot of options, and a lot of good quality horses to take a look at. So let's do that. The first leg of the late pick five is race 5 at Keeneland, and it is the all stakes pick five, I should say. And it's the Grade 3 Commonwealth Stakes. It's 7 furlongs for 4-year-olds now. And looking at the configuration, one thing to remember about 7 furlongs is it's a unique distance. It can be tricky, and not all sprinters love it. So if they're really good at 6 furlongs, it doesn't mean they're going to be good at 7. Now, they start this race in a chute, and what that means is horses on the inside can get shuffled back unless they hustle early to get to a good position. So if we always want to remember that. So if a horse is inclined to be up on near the pacer on the lead from the one hole, running out of a chute, it's a bit of a disadvantage because it can create traffic problems for them. So just a little thought as we move along here. Number 1 is Hoist the Gold, trained by Dallas Stewart. Dallas Stewart is notorious for trying to throw in long shots on big stakes days. But this one at 8-1, I don't think we're going to get the value that we would want. This one's been knocking on the door. Last one, they tried him around 2 turns, and he did okay. He was more of a pace factor than anything else. He has run at 7 furlongs a couple of times in the past, and he's been in the money, so we know the distance is agreeable to him. I just kind of think there's others in this race that appeal a little bit more, so I'm probably not going to use this one. Nakatomi is a horse for the course. You always love to see that. He's 3 for 3 at Keeneland, and the last race he had the Tom Fool. The thing that I'm wondering about a little bit, or for this one, is that he was a little far back and he had a little too much to do late. And if he's coming from behind, that may be difficult, particularly in this race, where there isn't a lot of early pace signed on, so he's not going to have a lot of pace to run to. However, he clearly has the talent. He loves the track, and I think we absolutely have to use him as a win candidate. It's second off the layoff is a pretty good angle for Wesley Ward, and just the fact that he's so agreeable to the track. I mean, I think you got to use him. Get her number. We saw, the thing that struck me right away was the Cigar Mile, where he gave Mind Control everything he could handle at his last race. It was really impressive effort. Followed that up in the Pegasus World Cup with a pretty dull and uninspiring performance, but it was around 2 turns, and he did have an 8 post, and, the Gulfstream, it does start on a turn, so we can maybe forgive that one a little bit. Came back into San Carlos and was lingering in the back, and again had too much to do late. This one tends to stay at the back, and again, without a lot of pace in this race, that is something to concern yourself with. However, Peter Miller is 37% and 68% in the money, third off with sprints. So I think that's a really good sign that this one will run a good race. And 4-1, I think, is a square price. And I think that you probably should use this one because it's good value and use him as a win candidate. Heart Rhythm is over in graded stakes. He is a competitive horse. He's 3 for 3 at Keeneland. But most of his best running has been done at the ungraded stakes variety and the optional claimers or allowance level. The fact that they've put him in graded stakes and he hasn't factored leads me to believe he's likely to be outclassed here. However, given his record over the track, I think you can definitely use this one in the exotics because he's likely to raise his game. But I don't think he's a legitimate win candidate to me. But you would get good value at 10-1 underneath. Legionnaire is fairly new to the stakes scene. You can see he's been running in maiden and allowance level. It took him a while to graduate the N1X. Took him 3 starts, and it took him 3 starts to graduate his maiden. One of the main reasons for that is, again, he's another late runner. He likes to come from behind, and he is a bit pace dependent. The good news is his last race was on synthetic, and as we know, horses moving from synthetic to dirt tend to pop and run a pretty good race. That said, I don't see where he would really stack up with these class-wise. His best effort was around 1 turn at Churchill Downs, where he got a 92, but that's not even close to the highest buyer that this field is capable of. So I'm not going to use him, particularly since there's other late runners who are more attractive. Spangster is your classic D. Wayne Lucas. He just loves to run his horses, and sometimes he runs them into the ground. And this one needs a break. This is a nice horse. He is pretty competitive, but you see his first stakes effort in the Whitmore. He was okay, but nothing. He really wasn't a factor at all. And I think that's just saying to me that this one just needs a freshening, and perhaps. I think there's room for improvement this one, but he needs a break first before that happens. So he's a toss for me. Run Classic loves this distance and ran a lights-out career-high buyer back in October at 7 furlongs. We just dusted the field, including Spangster. He has been around 2 turns of late, and he's been a little disappointing. We keep waiting for him to run that really nice race that we think he's capable of, and he just hasn't done it. Now, he's been okay. He's picking up a check every time around 2 turns. But so going back to 7 furlongs might be the answer for this one, to give him that forum for running his best effort. So I kind of like that idea, and I think that's a really good spot. Brett Calhoun's a good trainer, and I think this one's a logical win candidate, and you definitely want to use him. Pro-Occident is interesting in that I think this one could end up with the lead. There isn't a lot of early pace in this race. He's on the upswing. Is not running a graded stakes yet, but has been doing pretty well, and has run at 7 furlongs before. Broke his maiden first time out, and I think that's all signs that he's probably going to run a pretty good one here. Now, I don't know if he's a win candidate. I think there are others that with a little more experience, with their buyers are a little higher, that probably are more likely to win this race. But I bring this up because you might want to think about this one underneath with the lack of early speed. This one's at 12-1, so I think you're going to get some really nice value. And if you like him, you could throw him on your ticket. As far as the economy of ticket goes, I don't know if I'd put him on, but he's one to think about. And if you do like him, you might want to consider that for the reasons stated. Hear Me Song, or Hear My Song, however it is. This one has been pretty competitive on dirt, and at 7 furlongs has won, so you like to see that. Has a positive record at Keeneland, been in the money in all 3 efforts. The thing that strikes me more than anything is this one has been running on synthetic for his last 3 starts at Turfway, and one of them was a route. Didn't do bad, but as you know, again, I hate to belabor it, but synthetic to dirt, this is when maybe this horse goes, thank God I'm finally off synthetic, and Ted runs a pretty good race. So you're going to get some decent value. I would consider using this one. And this one should be rating right off the pace. And I think that's going to give him a jump over some of those later runners. See, this is another one. You might want to consider putting on your ticket with a price to kind of get things going in the pick 5 and blow it up early. So that's just something I would think about with this one. Long Range Toddy hasn't won in over 3 years, and nothing more needs to be said than that for me. He just hasn't been able to put it together. I don't think 7 years old is the time for a renaissance, and I don't think there's any signs to tell me that this one has one in the offing. He did come out of a big-time key race. Last Samurai, West Willpower, and Law Professor all won at the stakes level next out. But this one was no factor in that race aside from being an early pace factor. They may try to send this one again, but I think it's out of desperation, and I don't expect this one to be competitive at all. The second leg of the pick 5 is the 6th race at Keeneland. It's the Grade 2 Appalachian Stakes. It's run at a mile on turf for 3-year-old fillies. And number 1 is Beautiful Navigator. It's trained by Kenny McPeak, and hasn't done too bad. But I got to say, once again, the lingering problem is you got this one moving off Lasix. and Kenny McPeak is just dreadful when that's the case. And so, while I think this one isn't bad, it did pretty well in the last race. I don't see this one being a factor here, particularly when there's other later runners who I think are better off, better suited. Number 2 is Papilio. He's a shipper. And, a couple things to note is, number 1, he broke his maiden in an 18-horse field. So that speaks pretty well to him, I think. His debut in the Here Comes the Bride, I thought Cassie showed a lot of confidence putting him in a graded stakes for a debut. He did everything but win it. He showed a really huge closing kick late in the stretch and just wasn't able to get past Dance Macabre. But this one, I think, really shows a lot of promise. And I think you can put this one as a win candidate. You're going to get a square price at 6-1. And second off the layoff's a pretty good angle, so I'm expecting a move forward from Papilio. Cairo Consort, we all remember the Swedish champ with that dynamite close. Didn't really build on it in the Here Comes the Bride. Finished an okay third, but Papilio really and Dance Macabre just blew right by him. So I kind of wonder about that. And the other thing is her class level is not improving from race to race. So she's not really, the buyers look like she's improving, but her class level isn't. So she's kind of running the same at the same level over and over again, which is pretty good. I don't want to say it isn't. And she's got a rod on her and Pletcher trained. So all systems should be go. But as we move further down the line here, I think you'll see that there's reasons why I'm not necessarily keen on this one for the win. But if you like her, you could use her. Certainly hasn't done anything to. I wouldn't talk you out of it. I think there's other possibilities here. Heavenly Sunday is Brad Cox trainee. Florent Giroux on him, his 8 rider, and hasn't done too bad. Has been progressing pretty well. Didn't do bad in the Swedish champ, the race we just talked about. But here's an interesting thing: Brad Cox is 2 for 23. With 3-year-olds on turf with a 31-60-day layoff in a graded stakes. So this is not necessarily the ideal scenario for this one. And again, I say there are others I like better in this race. I could see this one being in the exotics in at 8-1. You don't get Cox at that price too often. So if you like her, you maybe want to think about it underneath. There's not a lot of early speed in this race. Might be a little more forwardly placed. So that's a possibility, but I'm not sure that this one is a win candidate. Alpha Bella is one thing I noticed about it. She's a little filly, and in bigger fields that might become a liability. She obviously has talent. Her last 2, particularly the Swedish champ, but for Cairo Consort's massive close, she would have won the race. She ran a really nice race in the Florida Oaks at Tampa. Mission of Joy just was a little better, and that's really all you can say. Alpha Bella ran a really nice race. I'm not sure that this one is necessarily improving either. She's at a good level for sure, and you can see she's creeping up. Buyers are getting a little better with every start, but they're not, she's not getting into that grade 1 level, and that's a bit of a concern to me. I think you should definitely consider her, and I think the underneath is more likely, but definitely a contender here. Be Your Best was right with all the better 2-year-old fillies, and she was doing pretty well, and until the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. But if you go back and watch that race, she had a lot of trouble. She was blocked and had to check pretty hard in the stretch. She did re-rally, but it obviously destroyed her momentum. Wasn't going to beat Meditate that day. Nobody was. But she wasn't doing bad. The only concern I have is you see, I don't see a steady growth. And her class levels aren't necessarily at what the other 3-year-olds are at. She's debuting at 3. We'll see. Maybe she'll you're getting 8-1, so perhaps a better effort is in the offing. But I think underneath is more likely if you like her. Number 7, Pleasant Passage. Shug McGahee trains, and there's a couple of things here that you just can't ignore that you have to love. You never see a Shug McGahee horse run bullets on their work tab. I mean, never. I can't remember the last time I saw one run a bullet, and this one has 3 in her last 4 works. You also see that she won at her first asking at Saratoga, which is another thing Shug hardly ever does. So this one is very precocious and won the Miss Grillo and closed like a freight train in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. I mean, Meditate was the star that day, but Pleasant Passage had just a big close late. I really like this horse. I think this one is a definite win candidate, and I think if you really want to get bold, you could even single this one. I think there's a really bright future for Pleasant Passage, and I'm probably going to single. Sabalenka has showed a bit of versatility, can win a number of different ways, off the pace or on it, but looks to be a cut below. Those buyers aren't just really going to cut it. Granted, this is her debut at 3, and you are getting 30-1. But I think it's highly unlikely that she'd wire this field. And if she decides to be off the pace, I think there's others that are a little further along on the trail. So Sabalenka would be a toss and certainly not a win candidate for me. Well Into is interesting. Owned by Augustus Stable. That's Mike Francesa's outfit, as well as Bill Parcells, and trained by Jonathan Thomas, very capable trainer. She has been progressing pretty well. She may be on the engine all by herself. She's likely going to go to the lead. I wouldn't be surprised, or I would be surprised if she didn't. And I think she's shown the progression that tells me that another move forward is pretty likely. And her club, look at who she's running against. She's running against Alpha Bella, Haystack, and Erna. There's some good horses she's been running against. I'm just not sure that she's got enough to beat Pleasant Passage. You're going to get 10-1 on her. That's not bad odds. So if you want to take a chance with her, I would do so. But I think it's just I think she's kind of up against it a little bit in this race with because it's pretty deep talent-wise. But if you like her, you could possibly use her. I could see it and wouldn't talk you out of it. The third leg of the All-Stakes Pick 5 is the 7th race. It is the Grade 1 Madison Stakes. It's run at 7 furlongs for 4-year-old and up fillies. And we look at the field, we have number 1, Cocktail Moments. Now, there's a couple of things right off the bat that you have to know. First of all, this one hasn't run since October of her 3-year-old campaign, so it's been quite a bit of a layoff. And McPeak is okay. Kenny McPeak is okay with them. This one is also running off Lasix, which, as we know, is not a good spot for Kenny McPeak. However, I'm not going to hold that too much against her because she's run without it before and done okay, so I don't think that's too much of an issue. Definitely, I think the cutback helps this one. Runs late and you can see, her broke her maiden at 7 furlongs and 1 going away. So I think she'll make 1 run from the back. I think the cutback is a good move. I never really liked this one at 2 turns. The Oaks campaign was this horse just never excited me. So I think this is a better move and looks to be going to be ready for this one with a few bullets on the work tab. So perhaps you use this one, but I think it's more likely under or on the bottom of the exotics. At 20-1, you get a pretty good rate. Number 2 is Goodnight Olive, the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint Champion. What can you say? I mean, look at this. She's 4 for 4 at 7 furlongs. She's 2 for 2 at Keeneland. She's only finished, she finished second in once, and she's won everything else. I don't see any reason to go against this horse, and I think that's one of the reasons this field is small. She's got pace to run to, which she should just be sitting off, and when the time is right, she should pounce. And I think she's the win candidate and a likely single. Society is a a pretty good horse, and came on kind of late in the year last year, and trained by Steve Asmussen. You see, the distaff was a flop, but she's acquitted herself pretty well. In particular, I think one turn is more probably what is better for this one. And 7 furlongs, the Charlestown Oaks, the house that Speed built, she won going away. Now, so she obviously, the distance isn't an issue. The only thing that she's really got to worry about is you've got some speed right next to her in Ugiri. But I think this one is a little more suited to win a duel if, in fact, it does arise. If not, she could be on the lead by herself. And if so, she could pull the upset. I could see it happening. But Goodnight Olive is pretty good off the bench. She's run well off of layoffs before, so you'll get a top effort from her, I think. So it could be these two dueling down the stretch. So you can put this one as a win candidate on your ticket if you like. I just think that she's probably playing for second like everybody else in this field. Gary, as we mentioned, is probably going to be forwardly placed with this one. Her better efforts have been against lesser. I'll throw out the Kentucky Oaks. I don't think this one wants 2 turns, and the fact that she's back in the sprint, I think, makes sense and explains that. It appears to me that she's just a cut below class-wise. If she tries to rate a little bit, I think she kind of falls into Goodnight Olive's pocket. If she tries to duel with Society, I think she's going to lose. So I don't think this one is in a good spot either way. I mean, Rudy Brissett's a nice trainer, and Santana and he have combined. I think they're winning at like 67% in the last few starts. So I mean, it's a good angle, but I don't think it really doesn't matter in this case because we've got a single that's I think going to be awful hard to beat. Mary Quay Contrary, trained by Shug McGahee. This is his first start with this one. And interesting, I've never really seen that before where Shug takes over for a horse, and he's really not so great with it. He's at 10% first with the team. So I think he'll probably take his time before we really see the best that he can do with this one, which should be pretty good. Has only run at Gulfstream and really didn't run against a whole lot. You can't deny the record. I mean, she's won all but one of her starts, and that one she finished second. 7 furlongs is clearly a distance that she likes. The problem to me is that she has the same running style as Goodnight Olive, and she's not as good as Goodnight Olive. So while she's in a favorable position for her, I think she's no match for the best in this field. So I would throw her out, maybe underneath, because she likes 7 furlongs. If you maybe can get third or fourth, but I think that's the limit. The fourth leg of the All-Stakes Pick 5 is the 8th race at Keeneland. It's the Grade 2 Shakertown Stakes. It's a turf sprint at 5.5 furlongs for 3-year-olds and up. And let's look at the field. Number 1, Johnny Unleashed, I think is a field filler. His efforts at stakes have not been, he did get a second last year, but he really hasn't done much this year. And I just don't see the form that makes him a contender here, so he would be a toss. Market Z is kind of interesting. He does fire well off the bench, and that's a good sign in this case. He's got a positive record at Keeneland, but the only thing is this is a pretty big class hike, and though he is consistent and he's usually in the money, there are others that appeal a little bit more. If you like this one, I might use him underneath at a price, but I don't consider him to be a win candidate. Artemis City Limits will be on the engine, I'm pretty sure. He's the speed on the inside. He should have the jump on some of the other contenders who are outside of him. He's a good fit in the class, but he hasn't won at Keeneland in 4 tries, so that's the one concern that you might have. But he is coming off a freshening. He did pretty well in the turf sprint last time. It's a decent 5th. And I think he's a win candidate, and I would use him. Baker's Bay is a rather interesting case. He was running long on turf for the majority of his career, and they've since switched him back to sprints when Tom Drury took over for Shug McGahee. It's not often you see a Phipps stable horse in turf sprint, but we've got one here. He's been running at Turfway on synthetic and has been doing really well. And if he can transfer that form to the turf, and if he does get pace to run to, I think this one might be a pretty good shot to take it down at a price. And I think if you're looking for value, I think you're going to get it here. And he is a late runner, so with the right pace scenario, this one could possibly take it down. So why not put him on the ticket? Mr. or M, or however you pronounced it. The big question is, can he do it at the stakes level? He's been progressing fairly decently. His last effort at a turf sprint at the fairgrounds was his best yet, and he won convincingly. So the big question is, can he do it at this class level? Now, the thing that I always am concerned about is when you have a 5-year-old who just ran their career high, it's very unlikely that he's going to do it again. So I would think that, I'm not saying that necessarily he's going to bounce, but with a big class hike like this, I don't think it's likely he's going to run back to that. So I'm not going to use him. All in Sync is kind of interesting. He blew the break in his last one, and obviously it cost him. But he didn't close badly, and he is second off the layoff. And the only thing about this one is he's kind of good race, bad race, as you can see. His last 4 efforts have been good, bad, good, bad. So he is due for a good race. I'm just not sure that I want to take a chance on him. Given the other runners in here, in fact, that his last couple efforts and stakes haven't been very good. So you can use your judgment here. You're going to get 20-1. I think he might be better suited to get underneath on the ticket, and I can't really put him as a win candidate. Noble Emotion, he's just not good enough. I don't see anything in his running lines to tell me that he could compete at this level. Maybe they see something for down the line. I don't know. He's 6 years old and he hasn't fared well when he's gone to stakes company. So to me, I can't see any reason to use him. So I would throw him out. Caravel, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint champion at 42-1. You gotta love that. He's coming off a layoff. He obviously likes the track. He's 2 for 2. And he's a win machine. I mean, he's been in the money 12 out of 16 times, 9 wins out of 16 on the turf. So he's a competitor. The only question I have is he is coming off a layoff, but he usually does pretty well in that fashion. But he's got speed to the inside of him with Artemis City Limits, so he may not get to the lead, and he might get on the 8 post. He might get shuffled back a little bit, but I think this one will probably get to where he wants to, and I think he's a logical win candidate for sure. So he's a definite use. Bad Beat Brian is he doesn't seem to do well at the when he moves up in class. That's kind of the biggest question I have of them. The race shape doesn't really fit here because they've got others who are a little more talented, I think, that want to run the same way. So I don't think things set up very well for him here. And, if you like him, I mean, you get him at 15-1, you can maybe think about using him under. But I don't see enough here to get me excited about him. Oceanic is interesting to me. Was getting good last year towards the end of his 5-year-old campaign, and you could certainly excuse any horse who runs in the Breeders' Cup turf with a big field. There's often traffic issues or whatnot, so it's not the biggest deal in the world if he doesn't do well. But if you look at the efforts prior to that, he really seemed to be getting it on turf. He had a really nice Woodford and the DeHaas he won. So he's coming off a layoff, and there's a possibility that this one could factor in this race. I think he's more a bet at underneath than perhaps on top. But you might want to consider him with some nice value. You get it 15-1. Stitched is his last race at Kentucky Downs. I mean, Kentucky Downs is a weird configuration. It's uphill to start, and then it goes downhill, and it's on a pear-shaped type of track, so the turn is kind of strange. So all those things considered, I mean, I'm willing to draw a line through that race almost, and he still didn't do too bad. He closed decently, but I think it was maybe just, not being used to running on that track. That was kind of the thing. Aside from that, the buyers really don't match up in this field. And I think I'm kind of guessing at 4 years old that maybe with, Greg Foley's a good trainer, that this one might have a pretty good effort coming off the bench. Hasn't run since September. But I think he's more a candidate to be underneath. And at 30-1, I'd consider putting him underneath in your try or your super and maybe even the exacta. But I don't think he's a win candidate here. Arrest Me Red is trained by Wesley Ward, the king of Keeneland, and he's owned by Leal Stables, who you may remember owned Barbaro. He's really up against it being on the far outside here, considering that he likes to be up near the pace. But he has done well here before from post positions on the outside. So maybe it's not as much of an impediment as it might be for some others. The other speed on the inside is really the bigger issue. So it's conceivable that this one may have to be used early to get to where he wants to. Class-wise, I think he's certainly a fit. And I would consider using him. But I think there's others, particularly with Caravel on the inside. I think it's going to be a little difficult for this one to take it down. But I could definitely see using on the inside. Nobody Listens will draw in if somebody scratches. But this one has been running. Really, the class is the biggest issue. This one's been running against State Breds in Indiana. That's obviously a little bit below what we're going to be dealing with here. So, maybe I don't know. You're going to probably get pretty big odds if this one draws in, but I don't see enough here to get me excited. And if he does draw in, I probably won't use him. The last leg of the All Stakes Pick 5 is the 9th race, and it's the Grade 1 Bluegrass Stakes, and it's running 1 1/8 for 3-year-olds. I have done a video for this previously, so I'll kind of refer you to that, but just to short shrift it and give you a quick synopsis. There's question marks on a lot of the horses in this race, so I think it's interesting from a betting perspective. Obviously, Tapit Trice is the now horse everybody's excited about, but as we've talked about several times, this one has some issues. He's going to be encountering traffic, I think, in kickback for the first time, being in the one hole, and he's got to get out of the gate faster and get engaged in the race more quickly. So he's kind of vulnerable in that respect, but you can't deny the talent, so I think you have to use him as a win candidate. Verifying that the Rebel Stakes was disappointing. We think it was more jockey error than it was the horse, but still, we're not overly certain about this one. But I think the lack of early pace in this race and the fact that this one's a stalker and likes to be up near it gives him a tactical advantage, and I really like his chances as a win candidate. Sun Thunder is... I think this is kind of a desperation move on Kenny McPeak's part to get this one in the Derby. I think he's going to be a little more forwardly placed than he normally appears to be. He seemed to have that intent last time, but he had some problems with a tight pack that didn't let him get into the ideal position he wanted. Saved ground on the rail, and he did have a mile close against a slow pace. So I think this one is capable of better, and he'll need it. But I think he could possibly put it together, and if he does, you get a decent price. The biggest wild card in the race is Blazing Sevens. We just don't know. That last race was just dreadful. And, I guess Chad Brown says he just wasn't comfortable on the track, so we'll draw a line through it. If we look at his 2-year-old form, he's a logical win candidate here. We have to see if he's progressed from 2 to 3 years old. But there's a couple of good things that you want to think about. Chad Brown is 44% and 81% in the money with first-time blinkers in this scenario. with a 31 to 60 day layoff, and he gets it at a 684 ROI. So that's enough for me to put this one on the ticket. I think you're likely going to get a decent price. He's kind of a wise guy horse, that's true, but he does have a Rod Ortiz on him, and I think you have to put him on your ticket. Now, one that I might consider that I don't necessarily would put on our tickets, but I might think one you want to think about is Major Blue. And here's why. Yes, his buyers are not quite at the same level as the other contenders in here, but he's probably going to be on the engine by himself. And as we noted, there isn't a lot of early speed in this race, and there are some question marks on some of the major contenders. So, that said, if this one takes another jump forward, he can very well draw off on this field. Now, it's remote that it's going to happen, but you're getting him at 30 to 1, and you might want to consider him if you want to spread on your ticket a little bit. And I think this is a race you definitely want to think about spreading on. I think this is one maybe you think about putting on your tickets. So let's take a look at what the Pick 5 looks like for us. Our All Stakes Pick 5 ticket looks like this. In the fifth race, we're going to spread with the 2, 3, 7, 8, and 9. In the sixth race, we're going to single Pleasant Passage, but if you want to spread a little bit, I would consider using the number 2. The seventh race, we're going to single Goodnight Olive, so I don't think there's any dispute that she is a clear favorite in that race. In the eighth, we're going to spread with 3, 4, 7, and 10. Caravel, I think, is a pretty strong candidate, but I think there's some other speed in there that may get the jump on her that have the possibility. And in the ninth, we're also going to spread with 1, 3, 7, and 8. And if you want to, I would consider adding the 9 Major Blue at 30 to 1. So the ticket is 5 by 1 by 1 by 4 by 4. So it's 5 times 4 is 20, times 4 is 80. It's a $40 ticket. It's a little chalky, so I don't know that we want to spend a whole lot. But if you add Major Blue on there, it becomes a $50 ticket. And, of course, if you do use Ticketmaker, you're going to be able to reduce the cost of it. So there is some value on our ticket. And so if we do get a couple of overlays home, then you end up with a pretty good score. And the nice part about it is we can spread because we've got a double single possibility. The All Stakes Pick 5 is has the tendency to be a little on the chalky side. Most of the ones that have been run this year have gone that way. So I don't know how much value there is for it. So I'd be that's why I want to be a little judicious in how much we spend on the ticket. But I think we've put some overlays on there that you can get some decent value. But you've got a double single, so that does allow you to spread on the other tickets without ballooning your ticket size. And again, use Ticketmaker and you'll get it at a more reduced rate, and hopefully we'll take it down. And I hope this helps you in your formulating your tickets, and I wish you the best of luck this weekend. We've got another video coming up on the Coast to Coast Pick 5 by request, and I'll have that for you later on today. I want to thank you all for your viewership, and of course, if you do like what you see here, please like and subscribe, and we'll be talking to you soon.